in a couple of seconds, it should say.
Looks like we're live.
How's it going, guys?
Uh, Dealing with a handful of injuries right now. Do you just want to jump into that?
Yeah, let's talk about your messed up foot and all that lot.
Cool. Yeah. So we're working through. I think that I haven't had it professionally diagnosed yet, but it's definitely setting marathon training to the point where if that's going to happen this year, I'm probably going to have 3 or 4 weeks off, but it's a real sharp pain inside the inside of my swelling or anything. You can see it from the outside. But it's just a super sharp pain whenever there's impact on it or whenever there's pressure on it, and it flares up on days when I run like crazy, like do what Coach Mark would definitely not approve of, which is just kind of tough it out and run anyway. Then obviously that makes it worse. And so I'm just kind of finally coming to grips with it and realizing that we're definitely going to have to be quite a bit. So speaking of which, there he is. What's up,
Hey,
pal?
Mark, what's good?
Hey, well,
Good. We're talking about injuries to kick things off, and we're going to talk about rep ranges and training more specifically, squat form, and then we're going to work into some more diet related stuff and blood work towards the end. Unless people start jumping in and asking us questions and pulling us in different directions, then I guess we'll go that way. But yeah, we're working through some. I believe it's called stress fracture. Never happened before, and so it. I was my treadmill was okay today, but really just any chance that I can put it in my schedule to get to the gym, the stair mill has been kind of a win because I can push more with my heels and less with the more and less with the ball of the foot, which is where the pain is. So that's how I get my cardio work in still. But yeah, running in particular, no matter how good you are on the stair mill, no matter how good you are on anything else, it's a different type of training, you know. So that was kind of a downer this last week, realizing how bad this injury has become. And so this year is definitely the year to focus on having a sustainable year-round look that is healthy and not competition shredded. So being asked to guest pose was like came at kind of the perfect timing. So just been around the foot injury in the meantime, and it means this workout is definitely hypertrophy based. All my workouts are hypertrophy based. But it was, let's see, Mark could kill me, but I definitely took some extra painkillers today, knowing that it was leg day, and this is kind of my only chance to train this week. So I'm like, all right, it's leg day. No matter how bad it hurts, it's happening. So about halfway through the workout, pain was really flaring up in my foot, and so I started to do it. And so I was about halfway through my walks, and it was just tough to focus tracking my abs properly and breathing properly. Then that led to not having the best form that I could on my low bar squats, and that triggered a if you guys ever had your belt really tight and like you weren't breathing properly and had that sharp pain in your ribs that I'm talking about, okay, so that's feeling of a rib popping out of place. As soon as that happened, I knew exactly what it was. Those things hurt, man. Those really, really hurt. So in the past, when it happened, it's been about 2 or 3 weeks to recover. And right now, yeah, just got hit with that. So quit squatting after that and just finished off with leg extensions, doing extended work. So still got a good workout in. But yeah, I'm curious if you guys have experienced either of the injuries. Any experience there?
Yeah, I've messed up my foot before, so I've got quite an extensive athletic history in like sprint training and things like that. So what would happen was I would initially start training. Then as weeks went on, I'd add in more intensity, more volume, more rounds, and I usually did fartlek training. That's basically kind of a form of intervals, basically. And what I found was the more I increase the intensity in terms of from point A to point B to point C to point D, each gap that I increase that level of intensity, seemed to cause more and more pain. So what I had to do was just take time off training, like completely, or it might have just been a case of doing, for example, if you want to increase your fitness, you might do elliptical trainer, cross trainer, something lower in impact. Um, so that might be a way you can get around it. I've fractured my feet or toes 3 times over and
Mhm.
quite experienced in that kind of regard. And I found just keeping my foot off the floor worked really well. Try not to overdo it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically it from my experience anyway. What about you, Mark?
Yeah, so in regards to like foot injuries, the only one I had when I was playing rugby, I tore my hamstring like a long time ago. Like somebody sitting on my leg, and I could feel the two tendons snap. But I think what Jonathan was saying, I completely agree. And I wouldn't do any high impact stuff at all. I would go towards a stairmaster, an elliptical, a row machine, or even get in the pool. Have you got a swimming pool that's local around?
Cool. Appreciate that. Thanks, guys. Any injuries on your end lately, or you guys train a lot smarter than me, so probably not, huh?
In the gym, I've never had an injury in the gym ever. Only outside like sports or something like that. But in the gym, no, I can't recall anything. I've never had a niggle or I've never pulled anything. I've always trained safely. I'm not a big compound lifter anymore. I was always into machines. I think machines are a lot safer. It's a lot safer to use. Because I usually go to like complete failure, and I feel like I can't do that on compound lifts. I think it's very dangerous if you do that on compound lifts. So I always say that machines are pretty much better. Same with cables.
Good stuff. Cool. And for those just joining us, we are experiencing a little bit of technical issues, kind of what happens when we have two people on opposite ends of the planet. So Jonathan's working on that right now. But awesome. Okay, question for you guys. Curiosity. Squatting, high bar or low bar, and why? I'm going back and forth myself.
For bodybuilding, I like the high bar squat. I feel it usually loads the quads in a more sufficient manner. One problem with the low bar squat for bodybuilding is that it'll put more pressure through the glutes and perhaps the adductors as well. Now we can provide ourselves a secondary stimulus for those muscle groups by using a different exercise. So it's kind of like we know that a squat is a primary quad developer. So we're kind of using ancillary muscles by using a low bar squat. Now, most people, generally speaking, will be able to squat more in a powerlifting stance, kind of low bar squat. So if you're training specifically for a powerlifting meet or trained to be stronger, overall leg muscle fiber recruitment, you're going to benefit more from doing a low bar squat. I can't really do any squat right now, besides some skissy squats and leg press variations. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting back into that. And I'm just wondering what you think as well, Mark. What do you think about high and low bar squats?
Yeah, not when it comes to the low bar squats, I'd be with Jonathan. That'd be more powerlifting, and then the bar a little bit higher. That'd be more for squat. I think I'm not a big fan of squatting either. Because I think it's just because of my genetics or the way I am, or because I'm pretty much the same as Colt. I'm an endomorph as well, and I just feel like when it comes to squatting, I'm really bad at it for some reason. I just can't get down deep enough. I can only go down to parallel, and then I'll stop, and then I have to come back straight back up. But if I'm ever doing a squat, I wouldn't put it down too low. I find that it's a little bit dangerous. I feel I haven't got control of the bar at all. Whereas I put a little bit higher, just literally on the shoulders, I feel I've got more power. But I feel like if I'm putting a lot of weight on that bar, that can basically if I'm going down into that deep squat position, unless you've got complete control of that bar, you tend to lean forward a small bit. So then that's going to cut off your oxygen supply, which is not a good thing. That's not something that I recommend. So just make sure that when we are doing squats, it's literally going, I would say somewhere in the middle, not too low, but just somewhere straight in the middle.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people that they're just squat and agree with their body. It's just they're with specific genetic, or it's just they can't get all down comfortably without compromising their spine. It's just not worth forcing. You're better off with a leg press in that case. And
or even a hack squat. I'm a big fan of the pendulum squat or a hack squat. I think it's just more safer. I'm not saying legs. I'm not saying squats are not brilliant. I just for me personally, I think you can get. I think you can get just as good leg growth with like not leg extension, the leg press, a pendulum squat, a hack squat. You can get just as good the workout. Like people will always say that squats are the king for overall leg mass. I would disagree with that completely because I find that it's very hard to go to complete failure on a free bar squat. If you go to complete failure on a free bar squat, you're in serious trouble. You're not going to be able to get that bar up. Whereas if you're on like a leg squat or a hack squat, the minute you fail, you can just rack it on the second last notch or the third last notch, wherever you feel good. Same with leg press. If you go to complete failure, you can use your hands to put your hands on your knees to just get that last rep up. It's completely safe. You can't do that in a squat. So when I hear the term saying that for overall leg development, you must do squats, I would kind of disagree with that. What do you guys think?
Um, I've used different variations before for developing my legs, and I think people will find the appeal of the squat mainly in terms of fulfilling their own ego. So we know, I won't say the numbers, but I can previously squat a ridiculous amount of weight, like an absurd amount of weight, and my legs have not grown any more since taking that out of my routine versus having it in. I've got the same muscle mass in my legs. One thing I have tried recently was simply a sissy squat, where I was holding on to the Smith machine bar in front of me, and had my toes, planted on the ground. My heels were elevated, and whilst I was doing that, I was basically just doing a sissy squat down as slow as possible. Then bringing my extending my knees, so it's effectively a leg extension slash squat at the same time. No loading my back. Now, if I wanted
Yeah,
to make that harder, all I'll do is I'll put a rucksack on my back or a chain over my neck or something like that, and just add
yeah,
weight to it that way. And that means you're going
yeah,
to get the same load and stimulus to your quadriceps without
exactly. Yeah,
putting 200 kilos on your back.
yeah,
And the same is true, as Mark said, about the pendulum. It's the same effective thing. So the pressure is going against your back that way, and somewhat downwards as well,
yeah,
versus just going directly down in a unsafe sort of manner. So I
yeah,
think he's right in saying the overall leg developer is the one that you can train one safely, two hard, and three get the same muscular activation that you would getting doing a squat. It does take some stability aspect out of it. However, you're looking to build your quads, not your abductors, not all these little tweaky muscles on the side of your hips and that. So we're talking
yeah.
about building the overall bulk of your legs. It's going to be something you can train hard in and safely, like I just mentioned.
Yeah, and I find that if your feet are elevated, like let's say you put like two plates on the ground, and you're putting your heel just literally on the plate, your depth you can go down a lot deeper. So your quads are gonna be hit a lot more in that way. Whereas what Jonathan was saying when you're playing your foot position, like if you take your legs out the side, you're gonna be hitting more abductors, the quads, stuff like that. But if you can imagine there's your foot and it's like that, the back of it is pushed up like that. As you go down, you're going to hit more quad, and you're going to hit more quad. The emphasis is going to be a lot more on the quads. Whereas if you keep your back straight and you push up one back, there's going to be a lot of emphasis on hamstring.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, no, and thanks a lot for sharing that, guys, too, because you're absolutely right. I mean, I think that anybody could make an argument that the squat is foundational and is great and it's just a great movement to learn, and it's definitely worth anybody trying to do it and discovering for yourself whether or not it's the right exercise for you to grow your legs. But I think it's just something that everybody should do, everybody should try. And then you get to a point where you're like, okay, maybe this is something that's like, I really enjoy squatting. I really see those numbers go up. And so for me, it gives me something to look forward to when I go to the gym. For me, I definitely have a lot of that. And that that definitely is what caused the injury today, because I was squatting 295 for 3 reps, and then I was like, okay, well, I know it's nothing compared to what you guys squat. I don't have very strong legs, actually. I've got to be aesthetic the way that I want them to, but definitely not. So I added I added 5 pounds of bar just to make it 300. And that next set, the one that triggered the injury. What's up, Sophie?
And Cole, can you start when you're doing legs? Do you go straight into squats, or do you do any like activation movements before you start doing squats?
Yeah. So today's workout was 4 sets of lying hamstring curls. This is after a 30-minute because when power walk with ankle whips to be able to warm up, get my pre-workout cardio in and everything. Just like what you do going to the gym. Because I'm not running right now. And then did 3 sets of lying hamstring curls, and then made it to 11 sets low bar squats. And then that's when the injury took place. I finished off with 7 sets of single leg extensions with a chain on it. Bro, if you've never put a chain on your leg on leg extensions, like lying leg extensions, it makes the lockout different. Good muscle connection there. And then 4 sets of abs just to make it 25 sets.
Cool. I did 9 sets today for legs. And I was messed up.
I did. When did I do legs? I did legs on what day? I did legs
It's recently,
on
Mark.
Monday. Yeah, I did. And I only did 5 sets in total. Just 5 working sets. I did 5 exercises, 5 working sets. I was crawling out of the gym.
And you feel like that stimulus was enough to go? Great.
Trust me, when I'm doing a set, like I can't explain it to you. I'm just, before I go into that exercise, I go into such a dark place that I'm giving this everything I have, and I know that once I put every single ounce of sweat into that set, there's absolutely no reason for me to do another set. Absolutely none. That's just in my opinion. I've always believed that. If you go really, really tough on that set, and you put that muscle to complete and utter failure, both eccentrically and the concentric part of the muscle, I just don't see any reason why you need to do it again.
Yeah. If I don't get 5 working sets, at that point it's just my day's kind of thrown off, and after that is when I feel like, great, we did a lot of damage. My muscles are gonna grow. Anything more would definitely overtraining. Did I overtrain up to this? Most days I am probably hovering around the point of overtraining. When I start to feel that, that's when I know I need to back off. But more so, it's about achieving the optimal mindset. And I would rather just be on the side of overtraining than on the side, because it's a moving target. You never really know. There's a sweet spot in the middle, which is where you're stimulating the muscle fiber enough to go, okay, I'm either going to maintain if I'm cutting, or I'm going to build muscle if I'm in a building phase, right? And so that's the sweet spot right in the middle. Anything less, you're going to lose muscle or not build it. And anything too much, you're going to get injured, and it's going to trigger cravings that are going to make it hard to stay on your diet. And we have problems if we go too far that way. So right in the middle is where we try to be, but it's a moving target. You never really know exactly where it is. And so I guess for me, once I feel like I've hit that point, I do a couple extra sets just to make sure we got it. And it makes me sleep better at night. But hey, guys, I've come from 50 working sets of workout last year to 25 working sets this year. So give me a little bit of grace, eh?
Yeah, just touching on this point, Carl, it's interesting to hear you say this, because when I first started training, 13 years ago or 14 years ago, whatever it was, I was doing something similar. So I might have been doing 4 sets, 4 exercises for chest, then doing the same near enough for triceps or biceps. And that would be an average medium to sort of lower volume workout. Now for me, that would be a ridiculously high volume workout. So it seems like over the years, as I've been able to activate more muscle fibers, learn how to train to intensity, as Mark's described it, eccentric and concentric muscular failure, and even the isometric failure as well, which I add in sometimes. Whilst doing that, the amount of sets you can do drops off a cliff, honestly. And you'd need someone to really direct you how to do it. And what myself and Sophie are going to try doing in the future is filming these sets. So where you can see someone, for example, for example, today, say I did like 8 sets of a leg extension. Sorry, 8 repetitions of a leg extension.
Yeah,
I'd
and I got them
find,
all on video, by the way.
yeah, I'd find a weight where I could only do 8 reps. Then on that 8th rep, I would do a static contraction in the end of the concentric position. I'd hold that for as long as possible until my muscle fibers on the quad start like shaking, like twitching. Then I'll be lowering it slowly when I can no longer hold that burn. Then that lowering effect will be lowering from top to the bottom position when it touches the stack. And when it touches the stack, it's just a light squeeze, like it's a light. It's not clamming. There's no clamming to it. You wouldn't hear a feather drop sort of thing. That's how slowly your eccentric needs to be to get to total muscular failure. Sorry. Yeah, I'd say not quite total muscular failure, because total muscular failure would be with forced reps and things like that. Yeah,
Yeah,
near enough the failure you can achieve on your own.
yeah, and I think if you are going to go to failure on your own and you don't have a training partner with you, I think the one thing that people just don't focus on is they let their brain take over their body. So if you're doing the exercise, your brain will tell you, listen, I'm done. Rack the weight, we're done. But this is when you need to just, where I say, I'm going to take a deep breath, take a big, long, deep breath, go for another rep. Take another deep, long, deep breath, go for another rep. Just keep going, keep going, keep going. And you'll be surprised. You'll probably get another 5 or 6 reps. But I'll make sure in those 5 or 6 reps, you're really focusing on then the eccentric part of the lift. So you're not just focusing on pushing the weight up. It's more now how much damage can you do on the way down. Because we know that in order to grow muscle, we're not just working the muscle concentrically, we're also working the muscle eccentrically as well. And you're probably doing more damage lowering the weight. Well, you are doing more damage to your muscles by you lowering the weight. So if you can imagine like a coil on a car and you push the coil down, like you can press as much as you can, and then as you let go of it, it just explodes. I try and imagine I'm doing every rep like that. Now, I'm not doing time and retention. I'm just controlling the way from A to B, but I'm making sure that I'm in complete control of the whole set. And I know that once I take that set to complete a muscular failure, and when I get off it, my body is like shaking. My whole body is shaking. There's no reason for me to go back in, because I'm probably not going to be able to get the first rep because my legs are shaking. I would have to back down on the weight. So I don't want to back down on the weight. I want to keep on logging my lifts in my logbook. So if I'm progressing every single week and my lifts are getting stronger, the weight is getting heavier, then I know that my recovery is good enough. That's the first part. I know my nutrition is good. I know my sleep is good, so I can get away with training legs twice a week then.
I think it might be useful for us to explain kind of examples of when we are training effectively, when we're not letting inertia take control, when we're controlling the weight, as Mark said. So one example that comes to my mind is, for example, in the leg extension where we're extending our legs. If we're controlling that leg extension movement, our knee shouldn't be rotating outwards, because that's a natural biomechanical advantage we place upon ourselves naturally to make it easy for us. As bodybuilders, we're trying to make this hard. We're trying to make our muscles work. So our knees, when we're doing a leg extension, shouldn't be doing, I'm obviously exaggerating, it shouldn't be doing that. They should be relatively straight up and down. Does that make sense? And the same thing applies when doing a bicep curl. So if we're doing you can't really see in this, well, it's a podcast, but you'd be lifting the bicep up in a relatively straight sort of position. Now, if your shoulder then begins to raise, your traps begin to raise, your body, your upper back begins to lean backwards, you're trying to limit that range of motion. So that's how you know that you're not activating the muscles fully. So you can use this as a way to alleviate the tension in the concentric phase, so you can lift more on the eccentric lowering phase. But that, if that goes too far, it then becomes problematic and can turn to injury. So there's that fine line you place upon yourself when you're trying to train intensely versus train safely, smart.
I completely agree with you. Yeah. So going back to what you said about the bicep curl, like when you lift it, if people are lifting, like say, an extremely heavy weight, what's going to happen is they're going to do this motion here. They're probably going to use their lower back. They're probably going to use their shoulders just to get that weight up. Whereas we know when we're doing a bicep curl, the first protocol is elbows back, just straight line down, straight line back up. That's it. When it comes into the leg extension, it's like the basics is push yourself into that seat, push yourself really, really hard, and really push your knees into the pads. So that means before you even lift that weight, the muscles are already under tension. So then all you need to do then is just extend the leg. So what we're doing is we're trying to extend the muscle. We're not just trying to extend the leg. We're really focusing on, okay, what's the insertion here? What are we trying to work here? Are we trying to work the leg? We're trying to work the quads. So when it comes to leg extension, the primary mover is going to be the quads. So we want to make sure that when we extend the leg press up or leg extension up, it's the quads that we're focusing on. That makes sense?
100%. Yeah, I completely agree with both of you guys. And thanks for those helpful cues, by the way. I don't think that's something that people spend enough time on as coaches, is the value of having mind inside the muscle. Yeah, progressive overload is great. It's important. And it gives you something tangible to be able to see your progress with. But at the end of the day, we're bodybuilding, we're training muscles. We're not just trying to move weight from point A to point B. If that was the goal, you'd be better off with a forklift, right? So,
I'm a big fan of I don't know if you guys know this person, Ben Pakulski.
Yeah, that's where I like most of my stuff, Mark.
I'm a massive. I've met him a few times. Is when it comes to exercise and movements, it's just incredible. I mean, I've never trained with the guy, but I've seen what he's done with clients, and they're not lifting anywhere near what I used to lift. And you can see they're sweating. You can see they're in agony. It's all muscle pain. It's all good. And these little changes that he does here and there, you put them into your training. You're like, holy shit! I can actually feel this is amazing. Like I did a pullover the other day for my back training, and the only thing I did was, instead of putting my hand like this, I'll step back. Instead of just doing this, I'm pulling it straight down. Ben is always saying, to work more the lats, you need to turn your hands around this way, and then literally just bring the arm down towards the hip. After the first rep, my lats were screaming. So you can imagine what I was like after 10 reps. I couldn't even move my hand down. There was just too much blood in there. Now, if you had told me I could have got 50 reps just doing that normal. I'd say after about 20 or 30 reps, I'd feel it. I want to feel it after the first rep. So less is more, if that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
This guy's wide as hell as well. When I met this guy at his peak, when he's sponsored by SideTech, he was the widest person I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, he's huge. His legs were unbelievable.
Yeah. Legs were ridiculous as well.
Crazy, man. He was a freak of nature, absolute freak. Like when you look at Ben now, he looks healthy now because he does an awful lot of fasting now, and he's looking after his health. And my God, when he was in his prime, his legs were unbelievable. And the way he lifted weight as well, he was lifting a ton of weight, but he made it look so effortless.
Yeah, this kind of segues onto our next question, which is from Sophie. She asked, when would you use intensifiers versus straight sets? So you guys might have differing opinions on this. What I'd kind of like to know if I was a viewer.
Hey, Jonathan, what's an intensifier? We don't really use that word over here.
Okay, so intensifier might be a slow negative, a rest pause set, a cluster set, extended times 10, anything which makes a straight set not a straight set near enough.
Okay, great. Yeah, because over here we usually call it like any kind of a shock method. That's what Arnold called it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So with this question, guys, what the viewers would want to know is, what are the perimeters you'd give to someone to say, okay, your training has gone from straight sets to a set with intensifiers. What perimeters warrant that being included in someone's program? And would it be something you could do every set or some sets or every few weeks? What would you look at?
Okay, so for me personally, I wouldn't put it in every set. I would probably, it depends on what we're doing. Like if we're doing a leg training, I'd be focusing on probably the first 3 movements, we're just doing straight sets. And then when it comes to the very, very end, that's when I'd probably add in an intensifier just to finish off the muscle. The reason for that is because we can actually track straight sets more than we can rest pause sets or drop sets or something like that. So I was saying, right, okay, the likes of leg press or a pendulum squat or a hack squat, let's focus on straight sets. So go to complete failure, See how many you can get. Log it down. Next time you come in, let's see can we beat the numbers. I do two pressing movements. So a leg. What I usually do is when I go into the gym, I always activate the muscle first. So if I'm training quads, I'll do leg extension first. Now the next exercise I'll do is I'll protect the lower back. So what I'll do is I'll do a leg press. By this time now, my legs are on fire. My lower back feels really, really good. Then I'll go into a pendulum squat or a hack squat. Now, for the leg extension at the very, very beginning, I might throw in a cluster set. So I might do a rest pause set to take that muscle to complete another failure. If I've got a training partner, if I cannot lift that weight up anymore, I'll get my training partner to lift it up for me, and then I'll control the negative. So I'll try and get a few more reps out of that. Then when it comes on to the next exercise, this is where I'll do a complete straight set. So I'll just go to complete failure, just one set, and that's it. I'll go on to the pendulum squat. Exact same method. One set, complete failure, straight set. Then at the very, very end, I might throw in some hamstring curls. I'll do the very, very same what I did at the very, very beginning. I'll probably do a rest pause set, or I might do a muscle round. It's completely, it depends on how I feel. Right. I think if you're gonna do like the likes of the isolation movements, I think you can't go wrong in throwing in like these intensifier sets because you're gonna be completely safe. I think what will happen is if you throw an intensifier on a leg extension or a pendulum squat, that's going to be an awful lot of load on your body. Like I think you're gonna fail a lot quicker than you would on a leg extension or a leg curl. That's just my opinion, and I definitely wouldn't throw an intensifier in if you're doing a squat. I think that's completely dangerous altogether.
Cole, what do you think?
Yeah, and I agree with both of what you guys said. As a general rule of thumb, I would say use that when progressive overload fails. So you've been doing dips, for example, 8 reps with 45 pounds. I'm just throwing out a number. 8 reps, 45 pounds strapped around your waist. Okay, you can do that. And then the next week you get 9. The next week you get 10 reps. The fourth week, start to fail. When you can't progress further past that, that would be, in my opinion, time to throw in a drop set. So you would do 8 reps or 9 reps, as many as you can. I guess 10 here, drop the weight, and then a complete muscular failure. And back, Mark, to your point of exercises that allow you to complete muscle failure, that there's so much truth to that in leg training. But I mean, really, any exercise, dips here is a wonderful example because you don't end with a contraction, you end with a nip. So you are truly training to failure on an exercise like that. That's just a general rule of thumb is how I like to approach just the general concept of using intensifiers or shock principles, I want to call them. I'll also add that I use them way more often on particularly stubborn body parts. So for someone that is like your calves are really, for example, I don't really train calves at all. I'm genetically gifted in the calves. For someone that really struggles with calf development, you might just have to throw the book at it, and you might have to do heavy sets. You might have to do drop sets. You might have to. Even just holding a back double bicep pose for you can, that'll torture your calf symmetrically, on like my shoulders, for example, that's definitely been the weakest part of my physique, which sucks. It's the most important part of your physique if you're a man. It's a deltoid, right? So for me, it's just taking a lot of same muscle supersets, and I'm talking. You do a set of behind the presses. I know it's not a good exercise, but man, it's great for muscular development. So I do that without getting injured and tearing a rotator cuff, and then like immediately after it, side laterals or doing upright rows, something that's safer, but you're keeping that muscle burning for like another minute. Stuff like that. What else have I done for shoulders? Invented a cable attachment to to have better range of motion so that I can actually hit your delts. Using that sucker for drop sets. I love cables for shoulder development, especially rear delts and side delts, because I'll do 15 sets of face strict for the rear delts, and then rock forward. And I mean, it's totally safe. You know, you're not pulling from a bad angle. It's compromise your lower back or anything. But when you start using some lower back and force out another 5 or 6 reps, and make sure that those negatives are real slow and controlled. So when it comes to shot pulls and, you know, ways of training that are outside just the normal sets and reps, that's kind of how I would answer that question. All right. Yeah. We have a question here from Nathan. Ooh, this looks like a question for me. Yeah, I'm with you on the overtraining. What are some common indicators you guys get when you're overtraining?
I've got a good one. You snap your back in half.
Yeah, that's a strong indicator.
Go on, Cop.
All right. Well, I'm gonna. Mark taught me this. I didn't even really realize this correlation until he brought it to my attention weeks ago. But there's a huge correlation that I've noticed, a strong correlation between over and sugar cravings. My sugar cravings go through to the point to where it's almost completely impossible to stay on my diet when I'm overtraining. That's the big flag and the first thing that I really notice. You know, the stuff like you're too sore to work out 3 days later when you should kind of be able to get that same body part again. What else? Just feeling overall stiff, kind of like C3PO. I mean, like just like your joints are just you inflamed, and that's a big sign that your muscles are growing, and so you're definitely working hard. And it gets to the point to where you're just stiff, uncomfortable for the next couple of days. Yeah, you probably need a couple of days of non-progressive overload. That would be a rest day. Not what I want to hear. You know, that might be that might mean you're doing blood flow restriction for the next couple of days instead of actually pushing and making yourself and just getting yourself injured. So
I think my biggest indicator is when I don't enjoy it anymore. Like if I get to a situation where I'm saying, like, I'm waking up every morning and I'm saying to myself, like, I don't want to go to the gym, I don't feel like it today, that's a sign my body's telling me, listen, it's time to take a break. That's pretty much it. And if, like I mentioned earlier on, like a progressive overload, if I'm progressing every week, like I train a muscle twice a week, and if I go any more than say one set that I'm doing now, I know I can't progress the next time I go into the gym. So the best indication I have is basically what I write down. So when I look every morning when I go, or the night before I go to the gym, I'm looking at my logbook and I'm getting really excited. So I'm saying, right, okay, well, this is what I need to do. I just need to go in, hit my numbers, and that's it. I think a big factor of overtraining that I see in the gym, I just see people just doing way too much. They're doing weight training, they're doing cardio, they're doing way too much volume. Like they're sitting on an exercise and they're doing maybe 6 sets of 15, and they're only warm-ups. And then when it comes to their main set, they've wasted so much energy on those sets. When it comes to the main set, they can't do it. And when you look at them then a few weeks later, a few months later, they look exactly the same. And if anything, they probably look worse. They haven't built muscle at all because they've just literally they're taking themselves to a point of exhaustion. So you can see it in their eyes, you can see it in their body shape. They look wrecked, and you can see that it's a number of factors. It's sleep, it's probably their water intake, it's probably their food intake. They're probably not getting enough sleep. They're probably relying too much on caffeine in the morning time. So these are all major factors that I see when it comes to overtraining. But I think the one thing is the mindset. I think if you walk into the gym and your mindset is not switched on from the minute you walk inside that door, I think there's a chance you could snap shit up just like that.
100%.
Yeah, I think as Mark so eloquently put and summarized, if you do not enjoy the session in the gym that you're about to do, then it's a clear indicator that something's not gone right. And like he just expanded on just perfectly just there, are you sleeping well? Are your hunger signals all messed up? Is your grip strength in the morning, is it lower? Like when you wake up, are you rolling out of bed or are you springing out of bed sort of thing? You should be itching to train. You should have this deep anticipation to train. if you're going to the gym, you're thinking, right, I'm going to have a sip of water. Oh, I can't really do it. I need to have some caffeine, some pre-workout, a Red Bull, whatever it is. If you're
Yeah,
feeling this need to have extra to put more in your system to motivate you, it's probably not. You're probably not right in the right frame of mind. We know people that overtrain as athletes do tend to get depression. We see this in science, in like studies, in case studies,
yeah,
for example.
yeah,
So yeah, I think the main thing is, are you looking forward to training or not? That's probably the one marker if you're going to look at any. That's it. Other than, of course, snapping your back, like I mentioned first and foremost.
yeah, yeah. And I'm like, when I wake up in the morning, I cannot wait to go to the gym. Like I feel great. I don't need anything. I don't need anything to get me going. I don't need any creatine. I don't need any pre-workout. I don't need anything. I just need to have a pint of water, put my clothes on. I'm ready to go. The only thing I need to look at, and then literally as I'm outside the door of the gym, the only thing I'm looking at before I walk into that gym is my music, what music am I going to listen to, and I'm looking at my logbook, what order am I going in? That's it. And then when I go in, I'm literally like, I don't even look at anybody. I just say, right, this is what I need to do because I know what I need to do. I'm going in. I'm going to enjoy this. It's just I'm not even looking at the mirror. The phone doesn't even go on. I'm just basic saying, right, I just need to go in, do what I do, enjoy the session, put everything into the session, and then leave. And that's it. And that's why if I went in and literally destroyed myself in that session, that's going to have a major effect on me for the rest of the day because my cortisol levels are going to go straight through the roof. I'm not going to feel good, and people are going to notice that. Then my digestion's going to be all over the place. You know, I mean, I'm probably going to take 1 or 2 naps in during the day. I don't want that. I just want to go in, hit the muscle hard, get out, look after my clients, do what I have to do, look after the family later on in the day, and that's it. Like after my training in the morning, I'm going straight to where I am now. I don't take any naps during the day because I don't feel I need to take them. I don't rely on any caffeine. I don't rely on any supplements. Now, don't get me wrong, I did years ago, but that's when I started learning more about the body. Like I understood, like, okay, I don't need something to get me ready to go into the gym. All I need is more sleep. So if 7 hours wasn't enough, I'm going for 8. If 8 hours wasn't enough, I'm going for 9. When I wake up in the morning, I'm fresh. I'm ready to go. I cannot wait. I cannot wait to get in the gym and just lift some weight.
That's how it should be. I think sometimes we forget that as athletes. You know, something really important to keep in mind. Thanks a lot, Mark. We got a really good question here from Mats Anderson. Super cool guy. I just got off the phone with him a couple days ago, actually. And you know, really good question, but I just have one more thought to follow up with on the subject of overtraining before we move that direction. But cool with you guys. You know me, just throwing out a different perspective. That's the cool thing about just being three episodes in, three sessions in so far is that all of us have different perspectives, and so I agree with both of you. I'm just gonna throw another angle and something to think about is that overtraining sometimes it can be a real effective way to get your mind off of something that's just driving you nuts. You guys both know that Taylor and I had a bit of a business setback last week, an online scammer. Yeah. Moral of the story, everybody listening, don't be an idiot if you're an online coach. And make sure that you to know who you're doing business with and make sure that you get on video and know who that person is before exchanging taking information. That's all I'm going to say on that. But you know, it's been a lot of phone calls and a lot of and like following trails and blah blah blah. But some of those days, some of the last couple of days, I actually trained to the point where I knew that I was overtraining, but it just kind of went through the day and got me through these phone calls with this. Some people have really bad intentions. It's just really sorry that they choose to live their lives that way. I don't know how people like that can live with themselves. I'm sorry. Just be quiet now. But man, but leaving a leg workout where you know you did some damage and you know you left it all on the field. Sometimes there's enough value in afterwards and just going okay, great. whatever's happening the rest of the day, I know I can handle it. That leg workout hurt. We did some damage. All right, what are we going to accomplish next? Like, it just kind of helps me get past it and move on and redirect focus to other. I guess what I'm trying to say is it's a helpful outlet, but don't abuse it. Get injured.
Yeah.
Right?
Sophie and I have a similar kind of thing. I'm not going to go over this point so many times over because I want to get through probably 3 or 4 more questions before we end this later.
Yeah.
So Sophie and I, when we approach a set, and I think Mark's probably similar, we're thinking, if this set does not go exactly as we planned, which is to be fucking brutal, we haven't done our job. We quite simply have not done our job. So for Sophie and I, if we leave that set on the table, we think we could have got an extra 10% there. We could have slowed down the negative a bit more. We could have contracted the muscle fully rather than just did a half rep. You know, we're thinking, fuck, that was shit. That was fucking shit. That's the worst thing we could have done. We look back at them, we reflect on that, and we then think, if we can overcome this the next time, we're going to be much more powerful people. And not just powerful as in powerful, strong, but powerful in our mind. So I think that's something that I'm looking at when I'm training, and definitely when I'm trying to hit my targets, it's something I really focus on intently.
And Colt, I'll just say just briefly on what you just said. I can understand the situation because we spoke about it yesterday. But what I would also say is that in order for you to keep progressing, you need to make sure you're looking after you as well. And I think that I don't think that by going into the gym and doing too much is actually going to fix the problem.
Oh no, and you're right. You are totally right. That's just putting a on it when you're having a particularly stressful day. But
you know what's better? Honestly, stuff like that. Just go for a long walk.
I know that's back the next day, and that was like what my body needed.
yeah, that's all it is. Because you probably need that rest to say, right, you know what? No weight training today, because the weight training could like fuck up your mind, and it's gonna take you to a place that you don't want to go. You want to be nice and relaxed. Go for a walk with Taylor and just talk it out, and you'll feel so much better when you come back.
Yeah, that's what she and I both do, and because she and I have been so busy, it's kind of hard to find that time to talk to each other too. And so that was therapeutic for the both of us, and we're able to kind of put that business mistake on my end, still carrying some guilt, just like feeling dumb for falling for it. But yeah, and then last thing on it is exactly where you were going with that, Mark. Is I know that the next couple of days I'm gonna feel stiff and I'm gonna need to recover from that workout, but in my mind, it was still worth it. And then it just means that the next few days I'm going to need to do blood flow restriction. I'm not going to be able to train that heavy for like a week later, at least.
Yeah.
Let's quick fire this question because we've got loads more to do, and I think we could get this done in about 4 minutes.
Oh, right. Let's knock it out.
All right. All of your guys' thoughts on using fatty meat only as a fat source instead of adding straight fat like lard, butter, or tallow. I tend to have most of my fat in terms of from meat or fish, from fish. And that's just my own anecdote that I found useful. I'm very unique in this sense, and it's not something that would fall true for most people. Most of my fat outside of that is from adding butter through the form of something which I call carnivore protein butter bites. If you have any binge eating issues or some sort of sugar craving, sweet craving, these things aren't for you. But if you want to get in more fat without having a lot of volume, they're a very powerful way of getting it down. So that's something I quite like to do. This is very contrary to what most people do, but it seems to work for me. Now, I know Colt does lots of fatty meat, and I'm pretty sure Mark does as well. So what do you guys think?
That's all great. Yeah, I'm a huge and hey, I'm up with you on that. What that you made about if you struggle with an eating disorder, and bro, just hey. No homo, and if you're homo, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to offend you, but I say, hey, no homo, I freaking love you, bro. I really, really do, because both of you guys know that that's a struggle for me. It's a struggle for you. We've all been through it. We all have backgrounds of eating disorder. That's kind of half the fun of having these conversations, is because this is therapy for all of us, right? Like once you get past something like that, you're never really past it. It's something that you got the rest of your life. But yeah, so like for me, keto bricks is kind of the only non-meat and salt food that I'm reading right now, because the macros are amazing. Love raw products, and for 99% of people, I mean, like, man, that is it's great. They're to be able to grab them and go if you do okay with the ingredients. But for me, yeah, oh yeah, no, it really ramps up my craving. And so it's not the last thing that I eat. It's always the first thing that I eat personally. So I'm on meal day right now. First meal is about 45 grams of protein and 60 grams of fat. That's enough to be able to stimulate muscle protein synthesis, but it's not too much that it's going to kick me out of ketosis. And so all that, I feel great for the next couple hours. There's a brick in there, but there's also a cup of bone broth immediately after that, and some sort of animal meat with it. My body will identify that those animal products as being more bioavailable, and so after that, my satiety signals are great. If I eat keto brick and stop, now I'm hungry and I could eat one and another one and another one, and then by that point I'm up to 400 grams of fat, and now I have a bloated stomach and I feel disgusting. Okay, so having so being able to allow a sweet treat and then followed up with something that is loaded with nutrients like an organ meat or the organ or a freaking bowl of bone broth that has something that's just loaded with nutrients. That's been my workaround. And then I just feel great for the next couple of hours. And then when it's time to eat my last meal, I just meet all the protein requirements, meet all my fat requirements, and bam, I'm golden after that. And it's been about a week to nail that down. I'm kind of talking with Bart Kane and with you guys helping me through this. So yeah, I hope we answered your question there, Matt. Sure if anybody had any more thoughts on that.
About you,
No,
Mark?
mine is the same. Mine's pretty basic. I mean, with me, I have a dairy allergy, and I can't when I have like oils like olive oil or coconut oil, my stomach gets very inflamed. So I just keep it basic. Just keep the meat. Just keep the fat in the meat. I miss eating the yolks off an egg. Haven't having a yolk off an egg in a long time. And the same
Because
with
you're
dairy.
allergic, right?
Yeah, I can't eat them at all. Just doesn't agree with my stomach at all. So mine is just pretty much basic, just meat. I have the odd bit of avocado. I might have some MCT oil with me meats probably after training, but it's just basic stuff like salmon, steak, chicken thighs. I'm eating the pork belly as well. I find all of that just is very easy on me go. So yeah, I just keep it basic.
Yeah,
Simples.
good stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, John, fatty fish. What are your favorites? You said that you get all that's from fish. I'm curious.
Yeah, so
And Mark too, because the only fish that I'm aware of that has more fat than protein is sablefish and black cod. Yeah, even it doesn't have as much fat as it does protein. So if you're really trying to bump up your fat numbers on a meat-based ketogenic diet, what other options do you have?
your first bet is going to be mackerel. Your second bet's going to be farmed salmon. Your third bet's going to be sardines, and these are just three that are commonly found in most stores across the world that I know of. I quite like halibut, but I don't often have that, and it's not very fatty. But my usual go-to source is farmed salmon. And I emphasize farmed salmons because it seems to trigger a lot of people.
Yeah, so why farm salmon? I'm kind of curious. You triggered me.
So I find it tastes better.
Okay.
It tends to be fresher than wild salmon, in my experience, at least the stuff that I've been buying. And the stuff that I buy, I'm pretty certain that it's got very strict legislation in terms of the quality of it. So what you'll often hear in line is people say, "Oh, but it has more toxins in it. It's got dyes in it. It's got this, that, and that, the other." And the dyes in it are actually an antioxidant and known as astaxanthin, which is very good for the body. So not necessarily a bad thing. Fish in itself has a lot of selenium, which helps detoxify the body from heavy metals such as mercury. So that's something I'm not concerned about either. Now, saying this, I would not only be eating salmon. I don't think that's the right way to do things. But I'm saying, in my own anecdotal experience, if I have fish in my diet, ideally 5 times a week or more, I feel better. My brain feels better. So, for my own individual experience, it seems to be that seems to be the way for me. Now, when I'm saying this, I don't want people to take this out of context. I'm not only eating oily fish. People will listen to this and make assumptions and misinform themselves. I'm eating probably about by weight, probably about half or maybe 2/3 meat. Then the rest would be salmon in terms of the meat or fish. Then I'd have eggs, whey protein, dairy, things like that as well. So fish is more of a staple in my diet for what I need and seem to feel better on than someone else's.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're making me hungry, bro, because we got Taylor scored and totally found black cod at Costco today, too. It's kind of expensive. We're having that and pork tonight. Yeah, sorry, Mark, I didn't mean to cut you off, bro. What were you trying to say?
No, you're good. No, you're fine. You're fine.
Should we get to the next question?
And then mackerels, I just looked it up. There's I would say it looks like it's about a 2 ratio from fat to protein. Yeah, definitely has more fat. Good stuff. Thanks, bro.
Yeah, brilliant. So next question is, can your frame and or shoulder width increase by lengthening upper traps through stretching and or farmer carry, etc.? I probably go first this one just because I can summarize it quite quickly from what I've researched. Is the clavicular length is what makes up your shoulder width. So it's a long bone, it's a long bone, not a wide bone, anatomically speaking. So the way you can probably widen this is get better parents that are naturally wider to get back in time. The other way you can do this
That's
is
sarcasm, by the way, everybody.
that is sarcasm. I'm not very clear here. The other way you can do this is through applying something which is known as Wolff's Law. So this basically says that if you apply a given force to the body, specifically the bones, that will cause an adaptation process which makes it denser, bigger, wider. So, for example, if you think of some guy who's, I don't know, doing karate, whacking a block, over time, if he does that repeatedly enough times, his bones in that area where he's whacking the block would become denser, thicker. The same is true of training. So if you're doing a lot of shoulder press, your bones would be over time bigger, denser, so forth. But how big they'll get, I could not tell someone. And now, how that applies to lengthening the upper traps, I don't know if we can really lengthen muscles. I think we're genetically set in terms of the length of our muscle fibers from point A to point B, insertion to insertion. However, I think we can almost lengthen the tendinous ligament tissue between that. Not by a lot, but enough so we get more flexibility. So that might mean if your natural structure is tight up here, so your muscles are tight, because there's too much tension going through your neck, that might make you appear narrower. So if you can relieve tension, so you're wider rather than narrower, that might give you the appearance of appearing wider, I think. So you probably could do that through doing farmers carries and things like that. But other than that, I've not got much else to say. What do you guys think?
I completely agree. I wouldn't add anything else into that. I completely agree with everything you just said.
Cool. Yeah, I love this question. It's right up my alley. So let's step back and go, okay, what is the overall goal? The goal in physique, if you're a man or a woman, is to have broad shoulders, a narrow waist, and either an hourglass shape, X frame. Men, we're looking to have a V taper, right? And so we want to have broad shoulders and a narrow waist. Now, if that's the goal here, which is what I'm understanding by this question, that traps have no place there. There's an aesthetics for traps, except for a muscular pose. There's nobody has too small a traps. I've always had too big of traps. That's always been my problem. I thought it was cool because I grew up slinging hay bales and everything, and so I'm genetically gifted in the traps, and they just have blown up way before I ever did my first bodybuilding competition. The problem is it makes you look like you're slouched. The key to a physique when it comes to shoulder development is all in the side deltoids and all in the rear deltoids. Nobody is ever lacking in front deltoids. Bench press, great, you can check that box. So the trick is to develop the side delts, rear delts. If you overdevelop your traps, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're heading the wrong direction. Personally, I never ever traps. I don't. They're there, great. But for just looking aesthetic day to day, I would recommend just forgetting about traps altogether and really focusing on those side deltoids, because that's what's going to make your physique wider from the front. The rear deltoids are key because from the side, if you're on audio only, you're not going to be able to. But right now, I'm basically sitting down and doing a side tricep pose. Bam! That's what makes it cap off of the back. And so you need both of those. Like I said, your front deltoid, you can pretty much check that if you're not skipping international chest day. and focus more on the muscles that are really going to help you to achieve that look that you're looking for in the first place. Hoping that this gentleman that I'm answering your question correctly.
That's helpful to know. Yeah, so a lot of people wouldn't know that. Because we know more side delts means more shoulder width. I remember actually when I was about 12, 13 years old. It's just a bit of a tangent here, but I actually got one of my socks and I put it inside my shirt sleeve, and I made it so it's like 2 millimeters thick. And I thought, what would I look like if I was 2 millimeters wider? I look ridiculous. I was like, I look really wide. So I thought, imagine if that was actual muscle tissue. That would make a tremendous difference to your physique. So I'm sure you guys have noticed yourself as you've built up your side delts, you've appeared much wider.
100%. Yeah, I think with Jeff Nippard, Canadian bodybuilder. If you've ever seen his channel, absolutely amazing. The way this guy documents all of his scientific articles and everything. But he was I believe it was him that was saying that the only 100% essential exercise for any bodybuilder is a good old fashioned belt side lateral. There's just not there's no other way to really hit that side delt than doing that exercise. You can do it with a behind the neck press, but it's not a power muscle, it's a stabilizing muscle. It's to be able to isolate it, you have to really think hard. You have to know what you're doing. You have to lock your shoulder. You have to lock your shoulder, your scapula in place. So the way to do that is like flex your lats, because then your clavicle can't move. Your clavicle, if your clavicle is moving, that's a problem because that means you're using traps. Your clavicle should be straight, and then your humerus should be moving because the side deltoid pulls on the humerus. So that's how a proper side lateral should be. All right, Mr. Mance is asking another question. Can you train every day as long as you don't overdo total training volume for a week? Oh, total training volume. I think we could just throw that out the window, right? It's if you're living in Norton, hey Mance, I like did pretty much all of my training the last several years using sets, reps, and total volumes per Lane Norton's teaching. After talking and exchanging conversations via our podcast a couple of weeks, I'm now seeing a whole bunch of flaws in the science that I used to believe in regarding total training volume. It's a helpful, tangible metric to use, but certainly don't take it as gospel. I guess I would highly suggest that you spend more focusing on your mind-muscle connection and making sure that you're getting proper distractions. And yeah, progressive overload. But as long as you're progressively overloading, you can just basically throw volume out the window, because as long as you're progressing, then who cares how much volume you're using? As long as you're growing and you're seeing the right results, then I wouldn't waste any more mental energy on volume, unless it's one of those things to where it's like you feel better after you check that. Like, hey man, there's value in that too, and I can definitely relate with you on that. There's nothing that feels better than at the end of the week looking back through your workouts and going, oh yeah, 5 working sets, got stronger every workout, great. But eventually, if you're natural, you're just going to hit a wall and you're not going to be able to progressive over. Then what do? Do more working sets and do more volume? That game for years. It got me in the hospital with a stomach ulcer. You just can't do that, no matter how much you force it. So while volume is a helpful metric to keep in mind, it's not gospel. And at the end of the day, your muscles just need to be tricked, and they need to be challenged, and they need to do something different than they did before to have a reason to grow or hold on to that muscle mass if you're in a deficit.
I think we should scratch this question altogether, but we should actually pose a task or a challenge to the viewer. So, how about this? How about this week, Mats, you do your 7 per week sessions, or whatever you happen to be doing at the moment. But in those 7 sessions, you do 6 total sets, all to absolute muscular failure. So that includes static contraction, concentric, and eccentric failure, providing you can do this safely and you don't hurt yourself. Try doing that and see how you feel at the end of the week. Then that'll give you a strong warning indication not to carry on doing high volume if that's what you're doing currently. I do understand the context of your question. I mean, you're trying to work out, can you get away with it, basically. The question is, if you want to build your physique, it's not about what you can get away with. It's about doing the minimal effective dose to provide the muscular stimulus and response that you want. And if that is your assumed goal. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of reframing this here. I kind of sound a bit condescending of my way I'm posing this sort of thing, but it's a challenge to you. So see how you get on with
You're
that.
British, bro, so it doesn't matter what you say. Everything sounds condescending.
I'm sorry about that, guys.
The only thing I would add to that, is just basically like you don't grow in the gym, you grow outside the gym. So if it depends on what your goal is. If you want to get like really, really big and you're completely natural, then we know that recovery is just as important as training. So exactly what Jonathan said, go train for 7 days a week, see how you feel by the end of the week. I'm pretty sure we'll have a different conversation next week.
You save yourself some time, Mats.
And that was brilliant, Jonathan, that you challenged him, because this guy will totally do it too. This guy leaves nothing on the table. He's a hard worker, man.
We've got a hard man in the chat like this.
Like, oh yeah, here's how. Let us know, Mats.
Yeah, I'm interested to see.
I want to see his video. So tell him to tag me in and let me have a look and go on the failure as well.
He's working though. Well, yeah. Just do the best you can and let us know how it works, bro.
He also asked, what are your best tips for training for symmetry? How much more volume on the weaker side versus stronger side? I've got a kind of different view on this to most people. I think you should work on the muscular contraction on both sides so it feels intense on both sides. I think if you have a postural imbalance, which means that you lift in a certain way. So, for example, if you're doing a shoulder press, we'll get the view. Say your left shoulder is lower than your right. One of your shoulders will work harder than the other to maintain itself. So that's irregardless of the fact if you're using a single dumbbell each side or a bar. You always have that one side that's going to be weaker or stronger. So I don't really believe that working muscle groups independently of each other will improve an imbalance. I think your structure, the way it is, based on the variables that you've placed upon it over time, your posture, the way you sit, the way you stand, your favorite side, I think that's all built into us innately. So I don't think we're meant to be perfect in that sense, like left to right. But what I would suggest doing is if you're doing, for example, a dumbbell curl, and you've got asymmetry in your biceps, maybe the left one's weaker than your right, whatever, you might start with your weaker side so you've got more energy so you can maximize that set. What else would I say? Just my own anecdote is my right bicep, so this one, is smaller than my left bicep, but my right bicep looks bigger. How does that work? So I wouldn't go chasing symmetry in terms of measurements. I would look at yourself in the mirror, and it might be that you're just not contracting one bicep hard enough, so you're not getting that full range of motion. Maybe that's it. There's lots of things to look at here. I'd probably suggest consulting with Colt on a personal level to try and work out how to address your individual imbalance, because I could just troubleshoot you all day here, but I don't think I'll give you the right answer because it's so many different things. But what do you guys think?
Well, I'd be the opposite now. I would be a fan of unilateral movements. I find that when I do unilateral movements, I find that I'm a lot stronger on both sides. Now, I can completely understand that when it comes to your structure, like if you're just really focusing on that muscle and you're not standing up or you're not in it like your structured position, then it's probably not going to work. Which is why if I'm ever doing like an exercise, I'll make sure that one exercise is completely contracted. So let's say if I'm doing a bicep curl, I'll hold that in a contracting position, just hold it there, and I'll use the other arm and I'll keep doing this. So that means I know that I'm really focusing on both arms. So I'm not just doing a unilateral movement, I'm just really focusing on one part, on one bicep. I'm making sure the other part is being used, but I'm doing like say 5 reps on this side, and while I'm doing 5 reps on this side, this muscle over here is under tension. So that means I know I'm going to get the same load on this side as well. Same if I'm doing a hamstring curl, like if I'm doing it like a seated hamstring curl, I'm always thinking in my head, right, I'm using this weight with my stronger leg. So if I'm going to improve on this, if I want to get stronger and I want to look better, I want to make sure that my left side is just as good as my right side. And if anything now, because I'm standing on stage now in a couple of months' time, I'm very, very conscious to say, right, I'm pretty strong on my right-hand side. Like, if you look at me from the right-hand side, I look quite well. I don't know whether it's just me, but on the left side, there's a massive, massive weakness there. So when I'm going to gym now, I'm spending a lot more time now on my weaker side than I am on my stronger side. Now, I'm not doing more reps. I'm still doing the same amount of reps on each side, but I'm spending more time in that contraction position on just that weaker side.
I see. Yeah, I think I didn't explain myself very well. It's not that the unilateral problem exists in terms of like a bicep curl, because a bicep curl, to get the right range of motion, you're going to be probably using dumbbells or single cables anyway. My example is explicitly for muscle groups which you'd be stronger using the two in tandem, but that's just my own opinion. But yeah, what you said makes sense. But after all these years, I still got one calf bigger than the other and one bicep bigger than the other. So I've been doing like all this sort of stuff. So I'm like, I kind of see it as a bit like a, what's the word? I got a vendetta against all this stuff.
It's probably just genetics.
At the end of the day, too, if the biggest thing we worry about is which muscle is bigger than another muscle, then that's a pretty good day. I mean, like, come on, that's a first world problem, right? I'm just kidding. Just as a general rule of thumb, too, when it comes to addressing muscle imbalances from like one bicep to another bicep. Yeah, I mean, like my left bicep is longer and my right bicep is a little shorter. So I have a better peak on my right bicep, but my left one looks like I have more mass. It's like, that's never going to change. That's just how God made me, right? And so that's something that you all want to take into consideration is wanting to be a perfectionist, because we're physique architects, right? But not getting neurotic about it. Easier said than done sometimes. But as a general, I think everybody in their training should have a mix of bilateral movements, because you're stronger there, so it'll help you with your progressive overload. And a bilateral movement, at least in the United States, is using one piece of equipment with two arms, so like or with two legs, whatever. So like a squat, that's a bilateral movement, right? A bench press, that's a bilateral movement too. Dumbbell bench press, that is isolateral. Leg extensions, to where each leg is moving independent of each other, that's also isolateral. When they're working the same direction. Now you do a double bench press with only one arm, that's unilateral. All three of those are very, very helpful. All have a time and place. When you're doing unilateral exercises, always start with your weak side first, go to failure, and then do the spur of reps on your strong side, and do not go to failure. So, for example, if you're doing, okay, so I'm right-handed, so my right arm, it's always a little stronger than my left arm, right? So bicep, for example, I'm gonna alternate back and forth to is that unilateral, isolateral, alternating back and forth. I guess it's isolateral. So if I'm doing if I'm doing alternated bicep curls, to where I'm going left arm, right arm, left arm, right arm, I'm gonna start with left, and as soon as my left arm can't do another rep, then I just do one more rep with my right arm, and I call it good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fair.
Cool. Good jam, guys. Lots of good. Okay. When is an athlete ready to compete in terms of both physically and having a high enough calories? Oh, that's that again. So we don't use the word calories on this show.
No calories, not once.
Yeah. So when you're intaking enough protein, fats, fuel, and having your metabolism's in a high spot is what he's getting at. His goal is metabolism. This is Matt's. And so what I'm trying to ask here, it looks like, is how do you know when you're ready to start a show? When your metabolism's rocking and rolling, and when you're physically and mentally ready to take it. Yeah, okay, great. You definitely want your metabolism to be high. When you're starting a competition prep, you should be eating a lot of food and hardly any cardio. And hopefully you're not more than like 15 or 20 pounds above stage weight, ideally. I like to start my preps at about 10, 15 pounds above stage weight, so I don't have cutting that is really necessary. Makes it a lot nicer and a lot more enjoyable. It's way more fun to be shredded 4 weeks out from a show than jumping at the bit and trying to get shredded right before the show. That's stressful, and you don't want to do that. So you need to make sure that your body composition is in a reasonable place to be able to start, and that okay, yeah, you're consuming a lot of food. You're not doing a lot of cardio, because those are the things that you want to keep in your back pocket as you go through your prep. When you hit a plateau, first thing you want to address is lifestyle and hormones, and making sure that you're optimized on what types of food you're eating, meal time, all of that. The last thing you want to do is start cutting on your energy. The last thing you want to do is start feeding yourself less. There'll come a point to where you have to do that. Come a point to where intuitive eating is only going to get you so far, and you have to throw it out the window because you're just going to be hungry for the next 4 weeks because you're doing a body competition. Welcome to the club. You're going to be hungry, wear it as a badge of honor. Okay. Last thing is, don't have any real important appointment on the calendar for the next 6 months if you're going to do a 6-month bodybuilding prep. My preps that I teach is between 3 to 6 months, depending on how far out we think the athlete is. But that's not a time to plan a vacation. That's not a time to plan like a 10-year anniversary or something. My wife's 10-year anniversary coming up in a few months. And so she's not going to be stepping on stage for another 10 months after that. Okay. So we got time to be able to enjoy that in the holidays. But these are the kind of things that you want to think about going into a prep. Also, your budget. If you do too many shows back to back, that'll make you go bankrupt really, really quick. Make sure that you can financially handle the burden that that hiring. If you think that hiring if you think that hiring is expensive, hire a cheap coach. that adds up a lot faster, and you'll be spending more money in the long that way. But then, I mean, by the time you factor that, your posing, the tanning, and the membership, entrance fees, depending on how many categories that you're going to do, those all add up too. If you're me, you do like 4 or 5 categories at a time, because why not? I'm there, I'm shredded anyway, and I'd rather do more categories than sit backstage and watch everybody else. But yeah, those are all things you want to factor in when you're considering doing your first show. And why? Why do you want to show? Are you doing it because you want to win on a fair level playing field? You want everything. You're 100% and you want everything tested perfectly. Great. Okay, there's federations that you can do that. If you're like me, and yeah, you want to compete on a fair level playing field, but I mean, like, I'm more to prove what diet and what strategy works and what doesn't. I'm going for the learning experience and for the exposure. I've been having a lot of fun at NPC shows lately, so a lot of things to think about. It's not a decision you want to run into, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, I think that's a wrap for this one. I got a consultation here starting in a little bit, so if I get moving on to that. Any last minute questions or anything that you guys want? Should we call it a wrap?
Yeah, I'll just go through one more question because it's getting late now. I don't see any super chats in the chat, which is very disappointing. But I think Cole summarised that brilliantly. The only thing I might say differently is if you're starting a competition prep from, I think you said 3 to 6 months out. If it was 6 months out, I'd probably look at not doing it, or at least having a diet break in between. I think 6 months of prep is, well, it's not for me. I'll be miserable. I'll probably end up getting rid of myself. So I wouldn't personally do that. But I'd probably have a diet break in between of like, I don't know, 2 to 4 weeks. But that's the only thing I'd really say was individual and based on my experience. Thoughts on Nomad versus multiple meals as it relates to maximizing anabolism. I think Declan already knows my views on this. I'll just go through them very briefly so you guys can have a longer discussion on this just before Cole has to go. I think there's a marginal benefit to having multiple meals versus one. I think the scalability and frequency of how many meals you has is based on the amount of food that you need to eat. For example, Eddie Hall would need to eat more meals than someone like, I don't know, my mum. Obviously, my mum's inactive. She's female. She's quite light. Eddie Hall's big and very active. So there's that as well. How does your meal timing affect your sleep, your performance? They're things I look at as well. I couldn't give a straightforward answer because it's so individual. What about you guys?
Yeah, so I think for me, I'm pretty much the same as you. I like to have regular feedings throughout the day. I just feel like if I'm on a set amount of macros at the moment and I'm eating quite a large amount of food, I find out I would struggle really badly to do that in one meal. It would take me ages to do that, and I like my food, so I like to eat every couple of hours. I think if I'm going into a show in a couple of months' time, I think then the one meal a day can benefit you because it's something to look forward to, and you're not thinking about food all the time. So I think that could help. But I think it just depends on what phase you're in. If you're in a building phase, personally, yeah, I would go for regular feedings, maybe 3 or 4. And then if you're looking to get lean, just maybe 1 or 2 would suit best then.
100%. I'll close just saying that you need 4 things to build muscle. Meal timing isn't one of them. You need a stimulus, you need water, you need the sleep, aka recovery, you need protein. The only 4 things that you need to be able to build. Carbs is certainly not one of them. Carbs will assist in performing better, maybe sometimes, so that you can get a better workout and get a better stimulus. That's why your muscles grow faster, not because of the carbs, do the muscle.
Yeah.
When it comes to meal timing, whatever in your life helps you get those 4 things down, that's a net win. So if for you that's eating 1 meal or 2 meals a day, like I do, I eat 2 meals and I love it and I feel and perform the best. Great, I can fit all macros into 2 meals, no problem. And I sleep just fine. Most people, if they consume that amount of food before bed, they're not going to sleep as well. Okay, so for individual preference, for me, great, it works. For you, you might be better off with your meals earlier in the day. It doesn't really matter, but the protein is the key. So if you're getting 1 gram of protein per pound of body mass, then you can check that box. No matter if it's all throughout the day, and if you're sipping on a protein shake literally the entire day, it doesn't matter if it's just one gigantic steak. As long as you get it in, that's all that matters. However you get it the easiest.
Thank you very much, Darkfield Carnivore, for your donation. I appreciate that. And hopefully, you can see you next time soon. I've got my own live Q&A tomorrow. Hopefully with Jerome and potentially with Sophie if I'm lucky. Other than that, I'll let Colt wrap this up because he's a brilliant host and spokesman.
Thanks for the donation. Do we just get paid?
Apparently.
Cool. All right. We'll use it for music or something. I don't know. Thanks. That's really cool. All right. I'm gonna head into this consultation on a high note after that. But yeah, thanks everybody so much for joining. We will keep you posted. Just follow any of us. We'll all be promoting the next one. But I think that we nailed down. Okay, this is super complicated with all of our schedules being able to make this work. I don't know. We probably spent like an hour today just trying to sort out different times, and it was frustrating. And by the way, and if I seemed a little edgy too, and we were talking about that, man, like I apologize because it's just a frustrating stuff. So yeah. Anyway, we continue meeting once a week, and now I'm thinking that Tuesdays at 4:00 p.m. Pacific time is the sweet spot that we nailed down, right? So that would be 7:00 p.m. for Jonathan and 8:00 p.m. right for Mark, right? Got it figured out. 7 hours, 8 hours ahead. So whatever time zone you're in, it's going to be at 12:00 p.m. Pacific time, 7:00 p.m. if you're in the UK, 8:00 p.m. if you're in Ireland, and that will be every Tuesday. We're going live. Cool. See you guys next Tuesday, and follow any of us for updates because we're all definitely promoting a lot. Schedules can be a total pain, is what Jerome Armstrong said. Yeah. All right. Well, 50% can. We're going to end with a motivational quote. Anybody got one? How about this? Strength, not only is strength a skill, but it can be learned quickly. Ken Ferriss. Good stuff, everybody. All right. Thank you again for joining. God bless. Catch you next Tuesday. Bye-bye.